Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today we have Beth Kuper joining us. Beth is an Enneagram teacher and board member of the International Enneagram Association, the Colorado chapter. She provides individual and group sessions to help clients discover their Enneagram type and deepen their personal growth. Through using the Enneagram, coaches can more effectively mentor their students and cultivate team building among their staff. As a human resources consultant, Beth also helps business owners recruit and hire team members. Beth, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Stephan. Very happy to be here.
So we've known each other for a little while. You've helped me with bringing on some great team members over the course of time as a recruiter. But in this episode, we're going to focus on the Enneagram because it's such a empowering and potentially life-changing tool that I think it deserves some time. We did have a previous guest talking about the Enneagram a while back, but I think that you have a unique take on it and a way of explaining it and talking about the value of it that it's worth a second look. So first of all, if you could explain for our listener what is the Enneagram and how it differs from other types of personality tests and assessments that people take on themselves.
Well, the Enneagram is a system of 9 personality types. But the purpose is, once you understand what your type is, to be used for transformation and growth. So you're not stuck in your type. The idea is by understanding it, you can move out of it and access the gifts of your type. So every type has got a certain habit of perception. So we see certain things and we just eliminate certain other things. And we think we're seeing the full view. Actually, we're not. And it's very revealing once we learn the other 8 types besides our own type, that there are a lot of other very legitimate ways of looking at people and looking at their perceptions.
Right.
And so the Enneagram is very, very helpful in showing us what our patterns are.
So if I am a particular type and I want to relate to somebody who's a different type, do I switch my type or do I just have more empathy for the type that that person has by understanding that type more and trying to get into their world and see through, their lens?
I would say you will certainly have more compassion for them. You'll have more open-mindedness towards them. You don't actually change your type, but you broaden your perspective. And also, there's levels of health in a type. You could be a very healthy type. You could be kind of average. You could be unhealthy. So there are all these different behaviors of the types. But the most important thing is to understand what the motivations of the type are. So if you're talking with somebody else, yeah, you want to talk in their language. If you understand what their patterns are and what their motivations are, you'll be more likely to make connection.
So what would be an example of one type that doesn't really usually mesh with the with another type, and how you might um, connect better with that different non-compatible type?
Okay, so that would have a lot to do with the levels of health. So let's say you're dealing with an average type. So let's say you were dealing with type 1. Okay, type 1 is very morally upright. They want to bring out the best in people. They want to improve themselves and everybody else. And so sometimes they can come off as being very critical and judgmental. Type 2, for example, is the giver, and that's loving and giving and being very kind and empathetic. But they also don't want to admit that they have any needs of their own. They want you to guess what their needs are, and they feel that you should just understand that. So a type 2, for example, might feel that a type 1 was being very judgmental when a type 2 just wants to open their heart. But really, they could be manipulative underneath that. So, and this, any type can understand or misunderstand any other type. simply because of the levels of health. There's a high side, there's a low side to every type.
Right. So, if you had to guess which type I am, because I haven't taken the Enneagram assessment, your stab in the dark be? I know that's unfair because I didn't actually do the homework
Oh,
of the assessment.
okay. First of all, I wouldn't guess what your type is. Okay. So I don't
Okay.
go around telling people what I think their types are, but I might ask you some questions and let you reveal your type and
Okay.
help you understand and you see what your type is. Because it's your journey of exploration. It's not about me deciding what you are and, guessing right.
Yeah. So if I were to take the assessment, how long would it take me to just fill it out on my own?
Oh, like 5 minutes, 5, 10 minutes. You can take
Okay.
the
So
assessment.
yeah, I should make the time to do that. Yeah.
Most of the time, the assessments don't necessarily tell you what your type is. I use them simply to eliminate the types that you aren't. Okay, I can see you don't have any relationship with certain other types, but there's 2 or 3 types that you might be. And then when I do an Enneagram insight session where I'm helping you find out what your type is, what your motivations are, your basic fear, your basic desire, all those kind of things, then
Hmm.
I have fewer types that I need to look at to try to discern what might be yours. And then, of course, I'm going to ask questions. I have an idea what your type might be. So I'm going to ask you questions that might help reveal what that is.
Okay. So what would be some example questions that you might ask a
Okay,
client?
for you, I might ask, do you value a very peaceful and harmonious environment and relationships with people? Is that something that's real important to you?
Yes.
Mhm. And what happens when you're in a very conflictual situation? What happens with you inside?
I get very uncomfortable, antsy, and I want to find the exit.
So you want to leave the situation.
Yeah, I mean, if that's more of a shadow side, I guess.
Hmm. Hmm.
I do want to um, patch things up or um, make things right. So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
wouldn't want to just leave things untended to. If it's my fault, especially if I'm
Hmm.
not to blame, that's not the right way to say it, but if I feel that I'm responsible in some way for the conflict, I do want to make things right.
Okay. How are you in terms of work? How do you feel about your work? How hard do you work?
I work very hard. I love my work.
Hmm.
I feel like I'm revealing light in everything I do, whether it's a podcast interview like this, or it's a speaking gig, or a client call, or prospect call, or working on an SEO audit. I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile and valuable, and contributing to the greater good.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you sometimes feel like you have too many ideas or too many projects that you'd like to be doing?
Oh, so many. I'm awash with ideas, and I think most of them are good, and so it's overwhelming and frustrating for me.
Hmm.
It's a quality problem. I understand that. It's but yeah, it stresses me out. Like I go into my to-do list and I have 5,000, well, probably more like 6,000 items in there.
I know, and you're being literal. You're not just being figurative. You actually have that many.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know you do.
5 to 6,000
Yeah.
exactly.
Do you have trouble? Do you have trouble setting priorities?
Yes,
Hmm.
everything's important.
Right, right. Uh-huh, uh-huh. And when you were growing up, did you feel that you were important in your family, or did you feel maybe you were overlooked, or what was your family's attitude towards you? Or how did you feel about yourself really in your family?
Oh, I was definitely neglected, but I knew that they were at fault and that it wasn't a nurturing environment, and I could always count on myself, and I grew up fast. I was very mature for my age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you found it? Did you find it difficult at any point in your life deciding who you are and what your purpose is in life, or how did that unfold for you?
It was difficult. I mean, it wasn't difficult in that I felt like I should be working on curing cancer or something
Mm-hmm.
in that regard. So I would study very hard. First, it was molecular biology in undergrad and then biochemistry in graduate school. But then I dropped out of the PhD to start an internet company. And in some sense, I got, uh, I felt like I was letting myself down and not living up to my full potential. But in retrospect, I did exactly what I was meant to do. That was part of my path. So I'm definitely on purpose on my soul path and making really good progress on that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time that I before my spiritual awakening, I didn't have that clarity.
How old were you when you had that spiritual awakening?
42.
Mm.
The first one was in 2012, age 42, and then the second one was last year,
Oh, very
January
recent.
22nd.
Very recent. Can you tell me about the one last year?
Sure. I've talked about it before on this podcast, so my listener may have already heard this, but I prayed to God for a job. It was January 22nd. It's middle of the night, and he answered immediately, and he revealed the matrix to me, showed me a lot of what was happening behind the scenes in this reality, and that changed everything for me.
Mm.
So the reason for asking for a job was I was inspired by Sheila Gillette, who is a psychic I interviewed back in 2020, and she had prayed for a job but she was on her deathbed. So I didn't want to have a near death experience to get a job. I just wanted the job. So,
And so
and I got it.
this job was revealed to you. Is
Yes.
it in alignment with what you're doing now?
Yes. Yeah. An ambassador of spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Very
Yeah.
nice. Nice job title.
Well, it's not about the job title. It's about how I show up in the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so much of what you've said leads me to reflect on. I mean, shall I tell you what I hear and what you're saying? Okay.
Yes.
I suspected this about you, but of course I wanted to ask you these questions though. But you sound very much and very similar. Only you can decide, okay, what your type is. But I'll just tell you what I hear. You have revealed many, many qualities of type 9. And type
Hmm.
9 is called the peacemaker. There's many different nicknames for each one of the types. The numbers are always the same. 9 is always 9, but it could be called the peacemaker or the harmonizer or something like that. And
Okay.
peacemakers are relaxed, laid back. They tend to be calm, friendly, open. They can see everybody's point of view, and they want to create harmony in an environment. And disharmony can be very upsetting to them. And also, um, they have issues with, because they can see so many points of view. They can have issues with trying to find out who they are. What is their identity? What is their purpose? Because they see everybody else's, and it's difficult for them sometimes to reflect on themselves, because it's just easier to go along with the group, to go along with other people's agendas, and they have this urge to merge. And so they can just go along, and there's a deadly sin and a holy virtue for every one of the Enneagram types. So the deadly sin for type number 9 is sloth. And some nines will just zone out on TV or whatever their addiction is, and it can be just too much of anything that is non-essential. Um, but another way of understanding that is kind of a spiritual laziness. because they don't develop themselves. They want to merge with everyone else, follow everyone else's agenda. So this is, you're basically, that's kind of your average 9. And when they wake up to themselves and they say, who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? Because 9s as children often felt overlooked. They felt that they were of no account. They weren't important. They didn't get support. And so when they start finding themselves, then they realize they have tremendous talents, tremendous abilities. They can bring people together. They can harmonize. They can see the big picture. And when you talk about seeing the matrix, that is a very, very big picture. And then the 9s can align themselves. Okay, what is my purpose? What do I want? Not just what does everyone else want. So those are just a few of the qualities of the type 9. They can be very magnanimous, very calming to other people, and they can really help other people find themselves. They're sometimes called the sweetheart of the Enneagram. I mean, everybody likes a 9. They're great people to be around if they're in their healthy state. So you sound very much like a 9. And in terms of your working and so on, in the Enneagram, let me just show you something. I just happen to have this here. Okay. This is a diagram of the Enneagram. You can see 9 is right up there on top. And you see there's 2 lines that go out from 9. One goes down here to 3. One goes down here to 6. These are your paths of growth. All right. And your path of growth to type 3 is your path of growth through integration. And so that's where the 9 lets go of their tendency to have too much and too many options and too many things to choose from and can't make up their mind. And when they go down to 3, they pick up the high side of 3. They don't actually become a 3. They just pick up qualities of the 3. And 3s are very focused, very goal-oriented, very achievement-oriented, success-oriented. So the 9 picks that up and gets, okay, who am I? What do I want? Let's get focused. Let's get rid of the non-essentials. And let me focus on what it is, what my gifts are, and what I'm doing. And sometimes, 9s can be absolute workaholics. So you have to understand that, that deadly sin of sloth that has many different definitions of exactly what that is. It can be a self-forgetting, So anyway, when the 9s get focused, then they can really find who they are and what their contribution is. And that sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting to that point. I'm working actively on shedding the non-essentials. Even though I still have that to-do list of 6,000 items, I don't get bogged down by them. I almost not deleted, but archived all of them and declared to-do list bankruptcy. But I couldn't bring myself to do that yet. But I do. I get very focused and I work really, really hard, especially on my spiritual mission. Really, really hard. So it's in the past, I binge watched TV shows and spent a lot of time doing unproductive things, but that's in the distant past for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like you're working on the high side of that path of integration. The other line, which goes down from 9, as you can see, the 9 goes down to your 6. Okay, that's the path of stress.
Yeah.
We can learn through integration and we can learn through stress. Most of us learn through stress a lot of the time. All right. So when 9s go down to 6, instead of being calm and peaceful and harmonious, they can pick up some of the other aspects of 6, and they can feel uncertain, and they can feel fearful, and they can not know what to do and want other people's opinions of should I do this or should I do that, or become very indecisive and anxious. And normally a 9 is quite calm, but then they can pick up that anxiety. So when you move on your lines, because you've got your 2 lines, when you move on those lines of growth, you can pick up the high side and you can pick up the low side of these other two types. So that all depends on how conscious you are. So if you can catch yourself, you say, whoa, I'm doing it, then you can go, okay, I have a choice here. I don't have to just do that instinctual behavior, that automatic habit pattern that I do when I get stressed. I can choose something different. And there's this wonderful quote by Viktor Frankl, which I love. I have it posted on my monitor because I like it so much. And he says, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So with the Enneagram, we want to expand that space between the stimulus and the response so that we have choice. So by understanding our types, understanding the high side, understanding the low side, where we go, we can have a choice and say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to choose something different. And really, it is only in our choices that we have freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I learned recently through this the awakening that happened last year is that free will really is in the moments in between, in that space. That's where free will is. Every other seeming choice that we make about who we hire, who we fire, who we do business with, etc., is just kind of mapped out for us. It's like we're playing the part in a play, but play that we co-wrote ourselves, and it's in those moments where we choose to be non-reactive, where we restrict that reactivity, and the moments where we choose to go beyond into an area of proactivity that is unusual for us. Otherwise, we're on autopilot. Oh, in the moments in between when you are making a more proactive um, decision or action that is above and beyond what you normally do, that's where you reveal light, and that's where you jump timelines. You get a timeline upgrade. So that's my understanding of where free will is and how it relates to the space that you talked about of from that Viktor Frankl quote. What do you think
I
about
like that? The timeline jump, move into another timeline. So then you have another destiny.
that? Yes.
And by revealing that, understanding that, you can work more consciously towards creating that. But you have support. You have spiritual support in doing that. You're certainly not. You're not a lone ranger here. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you get so much guidance. So much guidance. Stuff that just pops into our mind isn't from us. A lot of it. It's our guidance. It's our spiritual
I
support
like
team.
that. We have invisible means of support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once you know your type, and you know whether you're on the healthy side or the shadow side or average, and you know how you connect with the other types, what what are some tangible kind of daily next actions to take so that you stay on the high side, so that you relate better to the other types, and maybe integrate some of the higher attributes of the other types that you're not?
Well, I would say the first thing is you need to understand your own type, your habits of perception, your compulsions, your blind spots, all of that. So the Enneagram is just a fabulous tool for that. It really is my favorite tool of all the different personality typing systems I've studied. I've studied quite a few of them in my life because I've been so interested in all of that. And so you have to understand. You have to understand your own type. And what? Tell me. The levels of health. Yes, the levels of health. We move up and down the levels of health many times during the day. You may have a moment of irritation where you're totally pissed off, and then you drop it. So So that doesn't remain constant. But by becoming aware of that, becoming aware of our paths of growth, okay, which is our line, our path of integration, which is our line, our path of stress. What are we being challenged by? How are we reacting to it? So it has a lot to do with self-observation. I would say that's the most important thing, is after understanding your type, of course, helps you with your self-observation. And so you can see what it is you're doing without judging. That's the most important thing about self-observation. You're seeing in a neutral place. You are not judging in any way, and actually, you're not trying to change anything either. You're not just trying to be better or be better. No, you're just observing. When you're observing, you can pause, and then you can see perhaps a path you can take, or a perception, or something you can say, or anything like that, which is more conscious and more present than your automatic reaction. So I would say self-observation. It's a great tool. And you have to, in order to do self-observation, you have to first know patterns. You have to know what your patterns are. So you have to be able to see them. Then you can change them and be much more tolerant of other people.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of my mother. My mother was a type 1. And when I understood what that was all about, I didn't have to take her criticism so personally. She wasn't criticizing me to be mean. She was criticizing me. She's trying to help me be a better person. See, I had to understand what her motivations were, not just what it felt like to me, what my reactive self saw. It gave me a lot more compassion and understanding towards her. And it helps, boy, that helps with all the types. And, I don't have to know what somebody's type is. I get a feel for it. Just get a feel for it.
Mm-hmm. And when you understand and empathize with that person and understand their world and what triggers them, what their type is, and all that, then I think it helps them to get into a healthier, more empowered version of themselves and a healthier uh, version of that personality
Definitely.
type,
Of
right?
course, of course. When you can see someone with compassion, and then instead of telling them what they are, just ask questions. Find out how they see themselves, how they're feeling. Because it's a matter of them understanding themselves, not me telling them what they should do or how they should be.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and that proactivity of in a moment of uh, reactivity that you choose a different path, that reminds me of the proactive formula I learned in Kabbalah class. It's actually in the episode I did with Yehuda
Mhm.
Ashkenazi, one of my Kabbalah teachers, um, episode number uh, 98. Then the proactive formula goes like this. There's 5 steps. When a challenging situation or an obstacle appears, first you pause. So that dovetails nicely with what you were saying, Beth. And then that gives you the space to observe your reactive nature. Step 2 is then to become aware that your reaction and not the other person or the situation is the real enemy. Right? Your opponent is your reactivity. It's not the person you're in conflict with. And then step 3 is to realize that this situation is actually coming to you from the light. The creator has given this to you as an opportunity for growth. And then step 4, ask the light for help in finding the best proactive solution to the situation. And then step 5 is take that proactive action. It's really powerful.
I like that. I like those 5 steps. I wrote them down real quick.
Yeah, I'll include it in the show
Oh,
notes
good,
as well, or my
good.
team will.
Because that's a lot of
Yeah.
food for thought
So
there. Mhm.
yeah, and if we are a student of our own reactive nature and work on awareness of our awareness, it unlocks a door that is It just changes
Mhm.
everything. I mean, the more that you're aware of your awareness, it's like there's a famous, very righteous rabbi, Kabbalist, who I forget what if it was Rabbi Akiva or who it was, but he had so much awareness that he would talk to his body. He would say, "All right, body, we're gonna go take a bath now." Like we don't have a soul, we have a body. We are a soul. And he had that constant awareness of his awareness. That was incredible. So I want to be
Mm.
that aware. I slip back into the autopilot mode a lot, but I get more and more glimpses of the bigger picture by just kind of zooming out a bit. Yeah.
Mhm. Where does
So I'm curious to hear what the applications of the Enneagram would be in the case of a hiring of a staff person. So you're a recruiter, you use the Enneagram in the hiring process, I believe, and of course you have the certification and the expertise to coach people on the Enneagram uh, separately from a hiring initiative. But how does it come into play when you're looking to hire somebody?
Well, as much as I would love to talk about the Enneagram when I'm interviewing somebody, I have so many questions. I got my 20 questions that I need to ask them regarding, their background and the position and all those sort of things. And so I don't really have the time to delve into their Enneagram type, but I'm always observing them. I'm always watching. And I often will get a feeling for what their type might be. And I might ask them if they have ever heard of the Enneagram or know anything about it. I mean, it'd be very, very brief. But what I would look for is their levels of health, not their type. It doesn't matter what number you are, it matters how healthy you are, how self aware you are. And those are the things that I'm going to be looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Now, occasionally I will run into an applicant that I'm interested in for a particular position, and they do know their Enneagram type, and we will get into a conversation about it. Um, so that can be really, really helpful, but it is not a necessary thing. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what I do is a lot of my clients are coaches, and so they have their coaching students, and some of those clients will ask me to do an Enneagram Insight session. It's a 2 or 2.5 hour session with their student to find out determine what their Enneagram type is, what their wing is, which is a type next door to your type, which influences your type a great deal. And then when the coach knows that, if the coach knows the Enneagram, or I can help them understand it, then they have a better idea of how to coach the person. Because what they've got is they've got a composite picture of that person right away if they've got that type, if they know what the type is. So then that they know the high side, they know what the average side may be, and they will be able to speak in that person's language. They will understand what their
Mm-hmm.
basic fear is, what their basic desire is, what their habit patterns are, where they get hung up, and so forth. They'll have an understanding of all of that. It's a matter of just kind of unpacking that type, and they can be the coach can be much more directive in asking questions of the student or drawing them out, or if it's a coaching client, what their goals or what their purpose is or what their issues are. So that can be tremendously helpful.
Right. And so if you're dealing with a personality type of one, and that's your client,
Hmm.
you're coaching, and they start getting
Hmm.
rigid, then you can respond in a way that is different from if it's say a
Hmm.
type 9 and they're kind of losing themselves or getting slovenly,
Yeah,
is that the
sure,
word
sure.
for
Hmm.
just like
Hmm.
binge watching too much
Right.
Netflix instead of taking massive action.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
And you can inquire.
So I'm curious.
Oh, I was just saying the
Go
coach can
ahead.
inquire further Like, where does this come from? How much they're aware of it. Is this something they want to let go of? Is this a place they can soften? Because when a person knows their habit of perception, if you can soften your habit of perception, relax it, then you have a much larger arena in which you can work, in which you can perceive, in which you can make choices.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, there's another personality assessment that gives you a lot of insight in that regard. It's called Print, and developed code developed by Deborah Levine, who was a guest on this podcast several years ago. Amazing episode.
Mhm.
And the Print assessment allows you to understand what your unconscious motivators are, or somebody else's, and what their triggers are.
Mhm.
Really, really helpful. So you're either in your positive, healthy version, or you're in your shadow side. And in the shadow side, you get triggered. So you can have a list of what those triggers are that you put on your refrigerator, like Deborah and her husband, the two creators of Print, actually have on their refrigerator hanging up the triggers for her and the triggers for her husband, as a reminder, like, let's not trigger each other, and let's also be mindful of what our triggers are so that we're more conscious and less, um, you know, on autopilot. It's really cool. So I heard about Print from folks in Strategic Coach, uh, Dan Sullivan's program. They're very uh, uh, pro Print assessment. I've done a number of assessments, predictive index and
Mhm.
Myers-Briggs and Strengths Finder, and uh, Sally Hogshead has her Fascinate assessment. Like, and I love these assessments, but yeah, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on
I
what I
am
just
very
described with the
interested in it,
Print
and I
assessment.
think I'm certain that I listened to that, and I think she was an 8 because she talked about the Enneagram, and I think her husband was a 5. Now I'm not sure; don't quote me on that, but that because it had to be at least a year or more ago that I listened to that one, and I was fascinated with it
Yeah.
because I went, "This has a lot to do with the Enneagram. These people definitely know the Enneagram." So I thought, "Yeah, this sounds really good." I looked into it. I know it's expensive, but it looked very worthwhile.
Yeah, well, I think it's maybe a couple
Uh-huh.
hundred
Yeah.
dollars, maybe $300, something like that.
Right.
So,
Right.
so not
Yeah.
prohibitively expensive for a lot of people, but
Mhm.
I think it's essential. Oh, and
Colby
there's the
Assessment.
Colby assessment too.
Mhm.
So the strategic coach is really big on getting your Colby assessment. So mine is 3393. Then the nine is the quick start. So I'm constantly starting new things. I have an idea a minute, and this is not about cognitive abilities and strengths. This is about conative. So
Mhm.
that's Colby, Kolbe, and then to dovetail that with the Print assessment, so you understand your unconscious motivators and triggers. Like those, that's
Mhm.
the 1-2 punch, according to Dan
Yeah.
Sullivan
Yeah.
and
I
Strategic
like that.
Coach.
I like, yeah, that. I think those can be very, very helpful and certainly helpful in understanding who you're hiring. And it's good to give some of those assessments because you really
Hmm.
need to see not only what their
Yeah.
strengths and abilities are, but how well they're going to work with the team as well. Are they, how much is going to be similar to you, because you got to have an understanding, but how much is going to be complementary? Because if you're quick start, you might not want to hire somebody that was very, very strong in quick start because you'd both be really good in that area, but there may be other areas that you need that position to fill in for.
Yeah.
Has
Yeah.
that
I
been
feel
your
like I need a
experience?
cleanup crew because I'm starting everything and never finishing. Well, occasionally I'll finish stuff, but I need my team to do that
So
for
I
me.
think that
Like,
your screen
I'm
is
happy to do
frozen at
the
the
interview,
moment.
but I don't want to take the show notes or take the transcript and turn it into a long form blog post with all the images and the
And I
click to
am not
tweets
hearing
and all that.
anything.
Like, that would drive me bonkers. So I have my team kind of follow me along and clean up the mess behind me. So that's I think that's part of my personality type. So I'm curious to hear what your personality type is on the Enneagram and how that's impacted your knowledge of that personality type has impacted how you show up in the world.
Okay, I'm type 5, which is the investigator. So I love to learn. I love to investigate. I have learned many profiling systems. And another nickname for type 5 is the observer. I don't like that nickname so much because I'm not just observing, I'm actively involved. And so type 5s have a lot of awareness and incisive questions, can have flashes of brilliance at times, can see a very large point of view in terms of research and understanding of many different things. The downside of type 5 is type 5's. This was surprising to me because I didn't even realize it until I learned the Enneagram. 5s live in a world of scarcity. So the glass starts off with half full and it's being used up as the day progresses. And so it's like 5s want to conserve their time, conserve their space, conserve their energy. They don't want to be intruded upon. And so want to make sure. So for me, I need a certain amount of time alone. I need to focus. I can have a very deep focus. I have too many things that I'm interested in, so I have to really pay attention to what the priority is because there's so many things I could be exploring. I want to make sure that I have the time to do that. I want to, another thing is with myself, I want to share what it is that I know, not just gather information, not just gather knowledge, but share it with others and help others make better decisions. So when I am doing interviews, for example, I listen very closely, very deeply. I take a lot of notes. And then I quote back to the person certain things they say, because certain things will pop up for me so that I can reflect on the whole big picture. Now,
Cool.
I don't know. You're still there,
Now,
right?
something
Okay.
that comes to me that I think it will be very helpful for you, what you were just describing, is I learned this from Brendan Burchard, and he was teaching a large audience. I was at one of his events, and what he said was that you got to think of yourself as a power plant.
Mm-hmm.
The power plant doesn't consume energy; it generates energy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can see that I'm not using up my half-filled glass of water throughout the day, or I'm not using up my willpower, I'm not using up my energy stores, I'm actually generating energy as the day goes on. I
That's
think
really
that might
good.
help you.
I like that. I like that analogy because there are other types like 8s. They never wonder if they have enough energy to get through the day, and a lot of that is fear-based. I won't have enough, therefore I have to conserve the little bit that I have, and to just move forward regardless of how I'm feeling about the amount of energy that I have. Move forward because I love that, to be able to create energy, to gain energy from interactions with people. 5s often withhold that energy. And sometimes I have to make myself go out and socialize. I like people, and I like one-on-one is more comfortable to me than perhaps a group. But I have to realize that how I'm feeling may not necessarily be telling me the truth of who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's an important distinction here, though, that you said gain energy,
Mm-hmm.
and this is different. That generating energy is you're creating it,
Okay.
right? But it's not like there's the law of conservation of energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's like you're tapping into the powerhouse of you. Like you have your divine spark inside of you, and you can tap into that. So that it's almost like a nuclear power plant tapping into the power that is innate and trapped inside of atoms, and instead you're tapping into your divine spark.
I like that. I like that. Generating energy, not just trying to gain energy from from whatever. We try to gain energy from food or from, all kinds of things. We try to gain energy. I will remember that. That is a wonderful, metaphor and wonderful analogy.
Here's a really fun exercise that allows you to tap into that and kind of, not just access it, but embody it. And I learned this from Tina Zion. She mentors me on medical intuition and psychic stuff. And it's called the toroidal field exercise. It's really simple. Your feet are connected to the ground, and you're drawing up from the earth 4 different types of energy. They are rainbow light, angelic, golden angelic light, diamond-like sparkles, and violet flame. Violet flame, by the way, burns away karma, or not burns away, but it releases karma. That's a really good one. Saint Germain is the keeper of the violet flame. So anyways, you draw up all 4 of those energies. You can do them one at a time, or you can do them all at once. But yeah, just let's actually try it, right? So just kind of visualize those 4. Or actually, let's do them one at a time. So I'm going to breathe in, draw up.
Okay, that'll be better.
The rainbow light. Let's start with the rainbow light. And as you're drawing it up, it's flooding your body and pouring out at your fingertips and the crown chakra like a fountain. Okay, so that's the rainbow light. Let's do now the angelic golden light. Okay, next we'll do the diamond-like sparkles. And finally, the violet flame. Okay, so like I feel so energized. I just generated a whole ton of energy, and I can like go into my next appointment all ready to serve and reveal light.
That's wonderful. I can feel it too. I will continue practicing this. It's very simple. It's quick, and it's effective. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, really cool. So how does our listener or viewer work with you on doing this Enneagram Insight session with you, or hire you for the recruitment of a new important hire in their company?
Okay. Well, they get in touch with me, and I do a complimentary session. Not a session on their type, but just a get acquainted Zoom call, and find out what their needs are and what they desire and so forth. And then we can go from there and see what would be most appropriate for them. So they can contact me at my email, which is bethkuper@gmail.com. But you have to spell Cooper correctly. So it's Kuper. So it's
Awesome.
BETHKUPER@gmail.com. So I'd be very happy to talk to anyone who's interested. Whether they want a session for themselves, whether they want a session for any of their clients that they're working with, we can discuss all those things.
Yeah, or they're important team members.
Exactly.
I think it's invaluable.
Sure, I do team meetings as well. I do individual sessions with the individuals. Then I put them together. And, I really give them permission to talk about things that they might not be comfortable just talking with one another about, or might not want to bring up. And help them understand how each of them is perceiving things, and how they're responding, and how they like to be complimented, how they like to work together, how they like to get feedback. And it's really remarkable what comes out, because I kind of create, there's sort of the container is the meeting that we have, but what comes out of that, all I'm doing is just asking a few questions. And so it can be quite unpredictable what does come out. And it's always been very, very helpful for everyone, and certainly enlightening for me to see how the types work together as a team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if somebody has already done other kinds of assessments like Myers-Briggs or StrengthsFinder, predictive index, Colby disc, any of that. If they send those to you, is that helpful in you understanding them and
Yes, absolutely.
serving them better?
Because, yeah, the thing that I studied the longest has been astrology. So I've been studying astrology for well over 50 years. So when I know if I have a person's birth data, I mean, if I have their chart and I know what their Enneagram type is, the two work extremely well together. I love Myers-Briggs. I've edited, been one of the editors on several books on Myers-Briggs. I like that a lot. Higher alignment is an energetic system that I have learned, spent many, many years on that, reading people's energies. So I like to put them all together, that's very typical of the five, learning many, many, many different things, putting them all together into a composite. And then the challenge, of course, is not just learning these things, but actually doing something with them, sharing them with the world, which I am very eager to do. So,
actionable insights.
The more different type profilings, the more profiling systems that I have, it's just like there's an old expression, the more tools in your tool bag, the lighter your load.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Beth. And again, listener, go to, if you're interested, check out Beth. Send her an email at Beth Kuper, Kuper, @gmail.com. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. I wish you all the best in this coming week, and get out there and reveal some light and make a difference in the world. We'll catch you on the next episode.